Hello and welcome to the program. Our guest for today's discussion is Mrs. Chinyere Eyoh. She's the Executive Director of the Sexual Offences Awareness and Victims Rehabilitation Initiative, SOAR, Nigeria. Now, I think it's very important that we underpin our discussion with an overview of what child sexual abuse actually means. So many people may not know that this is actually um, in existence in our society, right? For those who perhaps know, may not even know what it means. They just see it as one of the things in the society. So, kindly give us an overview of what child sexual abuse means in order to underpin our discussion.
Okay, thank you. So child sexual abuse, very simply put, is any sexual activity with a child. In this sense, I refer to a child as being anyone below the age of 18, according to the Child Rights Act of 2003, which has been domesticated in majority of the states in the country, even though we still have some states that are yet to domesticate it. So when I say any sexual activity, it could be any of three types. First could be sexual activity that involves physical touch, where the perpetrator makes physical contact with a child, and that will include, of course, rape. It will include all acts and sexual acts that will involve coercion, manipulation, and threats to touch the child in their sexual parts or make the child touch the perpetrator in their sexual parts. By sexual parts, I mean the breast, the penis, any sexual act at all. Also involving putting hands or body parts or objects in the private parts of children, or making the child do the same. When we talk of sexual abuse that does not involve any physical contact, so that's when, for instance, a child is shown pornographic material, a child is, pictures are taken of a child in sexual positions, a child is made to listen to sexual activity, so bringing the child in contact with sexual material or sexual activity without physical touch is also regarded as sexual abuse. Let me also state here that even when a sexual activity with a child is attempted but is not completed, it is also still referred to as sexual abuse or sexual violence against that child. The third form, which could also fall under sexual activity that does not involve physical touch, but because of the age in which we are in now, because of the use of the internet, is exposing the child to sexual activity through the internet. We're having a lot of predators online now. So we have what we call online sexual activity or sexual violence or sexual exploitation, of a child. So in a nutshell, any form of sexual activity where that a child is introduced to, that a child is involved with, that a child is made to take part of is regarded as sexual violence. And most times, because children are naive, because children are vulnerable, we find out that perpetrators take advantage of this vulnerability, to manipulate them. So majority of the types of abuse that children face are really not forced. The perpetrator grooms the child by buying their trust. And it doesn't take so much to buy the trust of a child. Just be nice to that child, be available for that child, or buy the child as little as sweets or chewing gum, or just something that, something flowery or colorful. And you have the child's heart. And we have a lot of perpetrators who go down that route to buy the trust of the child. Also, in order to have access to that child, a lot of perpetrators also groom their parents and caregivers, because the parents and caregivers will need to be comfortable with that perpetrator, in order to allow that perpetrator have alone time with that child. And it is in that process of having that alone time with the child that the perpetrator now begins to introduce, concepts of secrets, concepts of this is between us, and sexual abuse can now thrive in that environment where all of this happens. So yes,
Okay.
in a nutshell, this is what sexual abuse of children entails.
All right. Just as you have explained, to me, I think the problem is actually bigger than what we think. How big do
True.
you think? How big do you think this child sexual
Okay,
abuse is
yeah.
in our today's world?
Yes. Okay. So as far back as 2014, a survey, the Violence Against Children survey, was commissioned. And while some people will say it is obsolete and all of that, but we didn't have as much cases then as we have now. So these figures, will I say, as far back as they are still relevant and probably do not show the true view of how bad it is. But even then, statistics tell us that 1 in every 4 girls and 1 in every 10 boys will be sexually abused before they are 18 years old. Now, understand that what that means. It means in any gathering of girls, randomly select any 4. And the statistics tell us that 1 of that 4 would have been sexually abused. Randomly select any 10, and 1 of that 10, randomly select any 10 boys, and 1 of that 10 boys will be sexually abused. This involves adults as well. So take a random sample of any 4 females, and the possibility that at least 1 of them would have been sexually abused as a child before they reach 18, will be very huge. Now, as bad as the situation is, because as far back as that 2014, the survey told us that we had about 9 million children a year that were being sexually abused. Now, as bad as that situation is, that survey also showed us that disclosure was almost minimal. The majority of these children who are being sexually abused were not disclosing. And even if they disclosed or told anybody about it, most times they would tell their friends who cannot do anything about it, rather than tell parents or somebody who was in a position, to help that child. For the boys, the statistics is even lower. I don't want to quote the statistics now because I'm not really sure of the figures here and now. But the statistics for the boys is even lower because, that survey showed us that, and from our experience in this organization, working for over 10 years in this field of sexual violence, we find out that a lot of boys who are being sexually abused remember the grooming process, and also remember the socialization that men are the go-getters, men are supposed to sow their wild oats and all of that. See it as a maturity ritual. If somebody probably older than them introduces them to sexual activity, it's bragging right. It's seen as bragging right without fully understanding and recognizing the traumatic effect that it had on them, even as boys. So the issue is huge, and that's why I, as a person in establishing the organization that I run, decided to go into it because I speak from the standpoint of experience, having gone through that and having significantly healed enough to say, look, I want to be able to give back to the community and help children, help families, help communities avoid this social ill.
All right, from your response, I could actually pick a few things. And this issue, it's about this issue of complicity, right? And sometimes, even when um, things like this are seen in the society, sometimes, there's this alleged complicity of, it's not because there's the use of force is not there, right? So they feel like, okay, the victim might also be complicit. How would you react to that?
Okay, so it's I would say a lot of factors are responsible for that kind of mindset. First is where we believe that the perpetrators, unfortunately, which are predominantly male, are adults cannot be wrong. So if a case comes up, if a child reports a case, as a child, there must have been something you do. It's called victim blaming, or blaming of survivors, where we know this man, he cannot have stooped so low to have done this. And if at all he did this, he must have been influenced. So in other words, what did you do? And then society now begins to ask the question of, okay, so what did you wear? Where did you go? As though that is the license, or that is what will make a full-grown man, assuming that the perpetrator, is one, to make such a decision. Let's also fall back to what the law says. The law defines a child, the child's right law defines a child as anyone below the age of 18. What that means is that according to that law, a child cannot consent. A child cannot consent to a contract, for instance. A child cannot vote. The law also says that a child cannot consent to sexual activity. The fact that a child allows it happen does not mean that he or she fully understands the gravity, the implication of what that act, what that act is all about. The law expects that the person carrying out that activity, being an adult, is in a place of responsibility. And even if for any reason the child comes up and says, uncle or auntie, I want this, you are the adult and you are expected to take up that responsibility of telling that child to go in and dress up, or give that child some form of disciplinary measure, or probably even find out. For the child to be making sexual advances, it means something has gone wrong in the socialization of that child. We also see a lot of times in our experience that children who would, for want of a better word, initiate sexual activity, which again, remember, is not consent. For a child to initiate sexual activity, it means that that child has been exposed to sexual activity, because children are creatures of experience, so the child is only playing out in their lives what they are experiencing behind the door. And so as adults, we need to take up the responsibility to be more deliberate about protecting our children, being involved in their lives and finding out, for goodness sake, the child that goes to school, the child that goes to your neighbor's house, the child that stays in your home, that is exposed to anyone. Again, because statistics tell us that majority of perpetrators, not only are they men, but they are close to the family. They are related to the family. They are known by the family members. In fact, they are trusted by the family members. They are the people that the family members will naturally give access to the child. And so the question for us as caregivers, as parents, is you bring a child into the world, take the responsibility of protecting that child and ensuring that that child does not come to harm. For any adult to come up and say, it was the child that made me do this, is an adult that is walking from the place, or speaking from the place of irresponsibility. Okay, a child cannot give consent.
All right. I think that actually opens up another question here, because you have mentioned the family, parents actually doing so much to ensure that they prevent this vice, right? And also on the part of, we want to have a two-side of a divide now. So this is one side is of the parents, the other side, do you think we have a working law, or do you think the government is doing enough to prevent child sexual abuse?
Okay, so I would say we have laws that are in place. We have the child's right law, we have the violence against persons prohibition law. also at the federal level that was passed in 2015. We have the trafficking in persons. So we have the legal framework that addresses sexual violence, particularly against children, is available at the federal level and also in some form at the state level.
Yeah.
The best framework is the Child's Right Act. And as advocates and activists, we are still on the matter, too. But be that as it may, our experience also shows that a lot is yet to be desired in terms of implementation of this law. Because again, remember that our law enforcement, are products of the same society that blames the child,
yes,
are a product of the same society that is rife with corruption, and so a lot of times justice that should be seen to be given is not given. And so one of the reasons why we do not have a lot of reports going on is because a lot of the clients that come to us, a lot of children who have been abused and their family members, in some way have lost faith, of the ability of law enforcement, to do their work. So there is still a whole lot more. I know development partners, I have done a lot and are doing a lot to build the capacity of our law enforcement agents, but a whole lot still needs to be done. A reorientation of mindset, a reorientation of what sexual violence is and who is culpable, a reorientation in terms of understanding what the law says. Sexual violence against children, and in fact against anybody, is not a matter that can be mitigated upon by families, where the family of perpetrators say, okay, we will give you 500,000 naira, or in even some cases as low as 50,000 or 100,000 naira, just so that you close the case. In some communities where we live, what happens is that a girl is raped or sexually violated and she's married off to the perpetrator. Sometimes the cases are reported to law enforcement, and again, because of the issue of corruption and all of that, there's some form of connivance between the law enforcement and the perpetrator in order to frustrate, investigations so that such cases, do not go to court. So I can go on and on again, but that doesn't mean that we do not have some members of the law enforcement who understand their job, who are committed to their job and committed to seeing justice happen. But for us to see the kind of change and the results that we need to see in this sector, a whole lot more needs to be done in terms of working on the psyche, on the knowledge base, of our law enforcement and those responsible for implementing the law.
All right. To draw the curtain on this program, I want you to, just in a way, to advise parents, advise family, and also what can the government also do, from these two sides, to prevent child sexual abuse in homes, also in our society.
Okay, so starting from the family setting, from the homes. In this day and age, it is, you can't bring a child up in the society today without having conversations with the child around the issue of sex, their sexuality, and avoiding sexual violence. And so the first advice I would give to parents is to first and foremost understand what sexual violence is, understand the signs to look out for, understand how it happens. And then secondly, seize teachable moments to have discussions and conversations with your children. Help them understand the difference between good touch, bad touch, and confusing touch. An adult or anybody touches you in your private parts, that's definitely a bad touch. You have a confusing touch where somebody touches you in a way that you're not quite sure what the intention of that particular person is. Let your child understand that they can talk to you about it. And in order for them to talk to you about it, it also goes even further backwards, understanding the need to have the right kind of relationship, open communication between your children, such that no topic is sacred, no topic is taboo. instead provide age-appropriate information. Let them understand that no matter how old the adult is, you can report an adult because adults can also make mistakes and not fall into the pattern of what our society says that adults are always right. No, there are uncles and there are aunties that are bad. Also, let them understand that in this house, there can be no secrets kept because perpetrators go the route of keeping secrets, in order to make them. So it's about constantly having that conversation and seizing moments. Let people who live in your house understand that your children are aware. Most likely, they know that your children are aware, and in their presence, you have these conversations with your child. They know that your child is aware, and they will not do anything with them. It's also important that if at all this happens, please do not cover it up. Yeah. Because the perpetrator that you cover up will go out to continue perpetrating. The perpetrator, and that has been our experience. Time will not permit me to even share stories. So please let these cases, be followed. And then also children who have been sexually abused also need therapy. They need counseling in order for them to be able to deal with that problem. Even if you cannot see it, take them to a counselor, take them to someone who can perform even play therapy, talk therapy, so that your child does not grow up with the effects and the consequences of this abuse. For schools, educational settings, because again, that's where we have the largest gathering of children together in one place. It's important. In fact, I would say it is a crime for you to have that kind of organization and you don't have a child protection policy in place, neither do you have a safeguarding policy in place, where all the staff in that organization sign to and understand their limits and their boundaries concerning their communication and their relationship with the children that they are serving in this organization. Let them know there is zero tolerance for any form of violation against children. Let the children also know that they can report, and let them be aware of the reporting pathway so that no child feels bullied or feels stifled from speaking out. For the government, of course, education, training, retraining, values reorientation. Those who are responsible for implementing the law will need to understand what the law is saying. And then for states who are yet to pass the law, it's only in the best interest of the child that the laws specifically protecting children, are passed. Then we know that your state is on the path to creating a safe haven for our children to grow up, to maximize the potentials that they give.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Charles. All right, so far we've been talking to Mrs. Chinyere Eyoh, the Executive Director of Sexual Offences Awareness and Victims Rehabilitation Initiative, SOAR Nigeria. Madam, we want to thank you for joining us. We hope some of the time when we...
Can I correct that a bit? So that was we did a name change.
Okay.
So that's the long version of our name. We are now known as Sexual Offences Awareness and Response Initiative. Sexual Offences Awareness and Response Initiative. But we are still known as SOAR.
Yes. All right, it's okay. Thank you so much. We're grateful. We hope some of the time when we call you, you oblige. Thank you so much.